And welcome to the Vertical Pursuit podcast. Mike Barrett, Mike Tatlock with you, and we appreciate it. We're always on Spotify, iTunes, the YouTube, the Vertical Pursuit app, and the website verticalpursuit.org. I always stumble through all those. You'd think I would get it down by now, but I'm always kind of looking around at it. But this is the podcast where we talk predominantly, at least aimed toward men who are beaten down and kind of under attack, and that's not to say that it's not for women too, for sure. But I also think, whereas I'm defending men on the one hand, on the other hand, I will say it is a lot easier for women to get personal and intimate and dive into things like this and just be self-reflective. And hey, us dudes, that's a little harder for us. And so I think hearing from those who have commented about the podcast, this is kind of a safe, I hate to use the term safe space, but it is kind of that for men, where we encourage you to take a breath and look in the mirror, and we're all in this together, and we're going to kind of get it figured out. And we try to give personal stories of our own shortcomings, things that we feel like we're having success with, but also things that are usually always, the way we try to illustrate them, usually always biblically tied. And then we try to figure it out together.
That's it. Yeah. And we've been talking to our last couple of podcasts. We talked about just our identity. We talked about where we find our self-worth. And today we're going to talk about something that I think is maybe not all something that everybody wants to agree on, but it's something I know we all wrestle with it, but it's in the water of today's culture.
Big time.
It is in the water. And the more we drink of it, the more that it influences us. I would even say it actually poisons us, to put it that way. And I've had that conversation with people. I'm like, man, sometimes you drink something and you don't even know that you're drinking from a source that down the road it's not good for you. and yet in the moment it feels good and it tastes good. And it's this idea of just being a self-centered culture.
Yeah.
And we talk about the idea of everything from narcissism to being self-absorbed. It's the Time Magazine would talk about me generations and me culture. But at the root of all of this, we all struggle with being selfish and self-centered and self-focused. And so I think we're going to unpack a little bit of what does that look like? What are the dangers, and how do we even see it in our own self? And then how do we navigate through all those things where we can actually be self-sabotaging and not even know it?
You used a term in a sermon a while back, worshiping at the altar of self.
Yeah.
And that kind of hit me. I went, wow, that's exactly it. And then another part was the laziness of selfishness.
Yeah.
Because we're born sinners. We're born broken.
Oh, yeah.
And therefore we kind of have to get help to find a way out of it. And I think our natural bent, because we are born sinners, is we lean toward the selfishness. Yeah. And in this society, as you mentioned, man, it celebrates it. You do you, dog. And it doesn't matter for anybody else. It's all about you. And I don't know how we break out of that. And I don't oftentimes during the podcast, once in a while refer to something I jot down. This one I have a few things because I do think it's a lot of people have good things to say about the poison of selfishness. Yeah. And where it lies, where it started. But I think, as I mentioned a second ago, I think the biggest thing for people to understand is you're born that way. You're born broken. Yeah. And so it's a constant battle of, I don't want to say self-improvement, because it sounds selfish, but it is true.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all have that bent inside towards self-preservation, self-serving, self-benefit. It's hard because the Bible talks about it. It's called our flesh, and there's this battle inside which we can break down. But I think everybody that's listening right now, you can look back on a moment, whether it was 10 seconds ago or 10 years ago, that you were at the crossroads and you saw, man, that was the repercussions of me living for myself, living where it was all about me, self-absorbed. It's like somebody, when you look at the stars and we talk about orbits, it's like there are some people who think everything just orbits around them. The problem is we're living in a culture that's what they actually want us to believe. I mean, it's been a wrestling.
Isn't that kind of the definition of narcissism?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And what's funny is none of us would admit that we're narcissists, and because there's actually the technical, from when you look at mental health and clinical definitions of narcissism that exists out there, and we could read that in a clinician's dictionary and go, well, that's not me. But I think to some degree, we're all bent towards ourselves, and what we can do is give ourselves a hall pass, because we can all find somebody that's way more self-centered and go, well, I'm not them. And then we give ourselves the hall pass and go, well, man, I'm actually pretty good. Well, now what are you doing? You're kind of self-edifying, and it kind of feeds back into that whole idea of now I'm better than somebody. It's just, we get caught up in those cycles.
Well, and I heard somebody recently say, compare the terms, and they kind of grouped them together, self-interest and selfish. They're not the same thing. And they kind of get, and a minute ago I talked about self-improvement. There's self-interest, which I think is important, and there's value in that. But it's the selfishness. And we talked about in our last episode, we talked about identity. And I think that has a lot to play in this too. But in this culture with kids, and I have kids, and you do too, I don't even know where to start with trying to tell them and try to defend them against, because here's another term that I think at one point was a good term, but it's this term of empowerment. Now that's fine, and I know it has its positives, but it kind of seems like it fogs the line, empowerment with selfishness. Everybody talks about, it's so empowering that no, that's just selfish.
Exactly.
So, I mean, am I off on that, or do you agree with that?
No, that's exactly it. And we use all those terms like self-empowering, and there's even self-help, and I think that so here's the other part of it. What I see in our culture right now that is feeding this is victimhood mentality. It's all part of the same recipe that goes in the same batch, right? And it's just another ingredient. Self-empowerment is to somehow, think about that, self-empowerment means I need to empower myself because there's something that has power over me. Therefore, if I'm being powered by something else, I'm the victim of that. And so what's happening right now in our culture is self-empowerment is the solution to you being the victim of something that has power over you. And whether that power over you is a system, a person, a class of people, an addiction, whatever that is. So we're in a society that's all about self-empowerment. And really what that's saying is that you are the solution to all your problems.
And this goes back to, again, in our last episode, we talked about identity. Where are you rooted? And if you're rooted in yourself, I mean, we go back to that. That's the same, the same solution. This is kind of a branch off of that identity talk. Because if you're rooted in yourself and that's all you know, and then we get back to the term we brought up last time was this true north, this North Star, then you understand why people become selfish. And I know that maybe in the past, in more of a tribal type, way in the past, maybe it was harder to be selfish. But then I go back again. Bible talked about being selfish all the time. Clearly, some things then were the same challenges as they are now.
Absolutely. Okay, so speaking of the Bible, because I know you got a great verse for us that you're going to bring up that I think just nails the world we're living in. But go back to the very beginning of human history. It's the Garden of Eden, right? And so you got God in there. God creates Adam and Eve, and God says, here's this amazing garden. And most people don't know that the word Garden of Eden means delight, but also means a walled-in garden. It means God has something amazing for you, but you got to protect that. And so God gives humanity a choice, because you can't have love without a choice. So God says, here's everything. Just enjoy it. I mean, you got everything, every plant, every tree. It's for you to enjoy, have at it. And then he says, okay, but there's just one over here, right? Don't deal with that one. So he creates choice. But then Satan shows up as a serpent, and this is where it all went south. And it's still today, the residue of that to this moment. Satan looks at Eve and says to her, you know what? Why should you trust God? If you eat from that tree that's forbidden, then you can be like God.
Right.
I mean, the very first thing he says is, you be God. Don't let God be God. You take the position of God. So I know none of us, well, actually, there are some people walk around think they are gods and little gods, and they act that way. But really, at the root of all this is, I want to be the God of my life, which is where we get that phrase, we worship at the altar of self, because we set ourselves in that place of like, I am kind of the God of my life. It is all about me. I decide what is right and wrong for me. And I make it all about what makes me pleasurable, what makes me feel good, what I think is right and wrong, relativity of truth. Because if I'm God, I get to decide what's truthful.
Yeah.
And so we live in a culture that without even saying it, we're telling everybody you should be God.
And I'm the guy that always uses terms like rugged individualism and self-reliance.
Yeah.
And I like to say that.
Yeah.
But then I go, well, since we were born into sin,
Yeah.
is that maybe such a good thing?
Right. Right.
I mean, and think about that again, because I had to read that like 6 times where it finally hit me. And I do believe in, the individualist strong nature and this self-reliance on myself, and I'm not reliant on the government, I'm not reliant on anybody else. That's all good and fine. But again, and you brought it up perfectly before I even said it. You talked about the Garden of Eden. If we were born into sin, if we were set to sinful natures from the start, when during the fall of man and we were broken, then maybe that's not such a good thing.
Right.
And then we go back to, what are you rooted in then?
Exactly.
And isn't that a shield that guards you from selfishness?
Exactly. The first murder that was ever created in human history, 2 dudes, Cain and Abel, the first murder that ever happened was because one guy wasn't getting his way. So it's like, okay, we just snowballed from there. And that's why I think we all manifest that self-centered, I want to be my God of my life. And it comes out in so many different ways. It comes out in our marriages. It comes out in our parenting. It comes out in how we interact with coworkers. And, we talked about worth in a previous episode and how many of us can't receive worth. We can't receive it. We beat ourselves down. I think the opposite of that is this thing called entitlement, which is I deserve all the worth and I deserve I deserve this. And it's crazy. I mean, like the world right now, you drive down the street and you go to some place and somebody doesn't get their way. I was at a Cabela's store. No joke. This just happened as a point in case. This happened a couple weeks ago. I go to Cabela's and I'm cruising through the gun aisle and I'm just checking things out. There's like nobody in there. There's 4 employees working behind the counter there. And I'm just checking things out. My wife and I are hanging out. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I hear this guy erupt. I mean, this guy is, this guy is just letting everything. And he's yelling, he's screaming. I'm like, what's the commotion? I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I turn the corner, I walk over there. Here's this big dude, and he is screaming. He's just giving it to these 4 employees, one of which was like, probably a college kid and a couple other guys. And I can see the look on their face and like terror, like somebody help us out. Security has to come over there. Managers have to come over there. Here's what the guy was ranting about. He had just bought a product, and he said, and as he's screaming with all his insults and swear words, he's like, I just bought this from you. I deserve. And he was asking them to give him another product or something. And it was all this eruption and anger and just this festering, this spewing this poison because he wasn't getting what he felt entitled to. And I know we can do that. We've all probably have done that. Maybe some of you are listening, that was me this morning, or some of us were like, I've seen that, because again, it's always somebody else that does that. And you go like, what is that? It is, again, it's toxic inside of us. And if we are self-driven, it's toxic in us, but it makes the relationships we have toxic and hazardous as well.
And there's sometimes you can see people and recognize situations where people are looking for situations where to get upset about.
Absolutely.
That I don't necessarily entitlement, but looking for a reason to erupt on somebody.
Totally.
Especially these days when I think that there is a lot of frustration. C.S. Lewis said something which he's awesome. It is not in our self-interest to be selfish. Rather, self-denial is in our self-interest.
That's good.
So tell me, because the Bible talks about denying yourself.
Yep.
To people who aren't biblical scholars or even maybe understand that, because I'd like to think I do, but I always hear denial, self-denial, and then you think fasting or something. But what does that mean in that context?
Well, that context exactly. So Jesus shows up, and again, what I love about Jesus, when he shows up, he offers a contrast. And Jesus says, hey, I have a set of values that's in contrast to the values of the world. You know, the world is all about self-promotion. And Jesus said, actually, if you live by my values, it's the opposite of that. The last are the ones who are first, and the first are the ones who are last. Those who try to push themselves up the ladder and self-promote. In fact, there's this one story where the disciples, you know, it was like 12, and 2 of them were like, they're walking down the path, and 2 kind of speed up a little bit to catch up with Jesus, creating a little distance between the others intentionally, because they don't want the others to hear that they've been scheming. 2 of them, because they're like, hey, Jesus, can we be your top dogs?
Right.
They're like vying for this position that they would get the place of honor over their other brothers, right? And it got so bad at one time, the Bible tells us that even their mothers came to Jesus trying to get their boys to sit at the head seat with Jesus. Anytime you get mom involved.
Hey, coach, play our kids.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. And Jesus is like, no. And she looks at them, the same thing she told the guys was like, hey, no, the way I roll, it's the first or last, the last or first. And those who try to be about self-promotion, they're never going to get it. And so what Jesus said was, he goes, I've come that you may have life with fullness. You know, so it is in our self-interest. We were created to live a full life. Jesus didn't say you were created so that you can be in hopelessness and despair and all those sort of things. No, he created us that we would have life fully, right? But then he says this statement. He says, those who lose their life for my sake, they will actually find their life. What he was talking about was self-denial, self-sacrifice, and setting ourselves aside, making him number one. We use the language in our church, we have to die to ourselves. Because Jesus said, if you die to yourself, you'll actually find your life. It's the life I have for you. It's a life of meaning. It's a life of purpose. But that comes after you really have to murder yourself. And he was speaking in the context of literal crucifixions. Yeah. And that was the backdrop. And he's like, these people are dying on a cross. They were murdered. And so you got to murder your self-interest in the sense of ego and self-promotion. But then he said, actually, the end result is you gain life. So it is in your best self-interest to make your life not about you, because in the end, you'll actually gain more.
So if I didn't plan on this question, but if you know somebody,
right,
be it whoever, who is a victim of this constant selfishness, even narcissism, how do you begin to approach that?
I know.
With them to say, dude, it ain't all about you.
Uh-huh.
Which I guess maybe that's the best way to do it if you want to be totally honest. But oftentimes I think the way I have, in the few times I've said that, when somebody is in one of those situations, and this can be for a Christian or a non-Christian, go do something for somebody else and watch how it serves as a distraction and keeps the focus off of you. Your self-obsession lowers when you go do something for somebody else.
Totally.
And again, that, I think in a Christian setting, that has lots of different, I mean, people go, oh, okay, I understand. I'll go lead, I'll go help, I'll go serve some way. But even for people who maybe aren't there or aren't church going, go volunteer somewhere. I feel like that, I know it sounds cliche, but anything to take the focus off yourself, I think for narcissistic people, that's your best medicine.
It is.
Not
Absolutely.
a pill.
Well, and you know, when you wake up every day, instead of thinking, what's in this for me? Because that question right there is the question of negotiation we use in all our relationships. Marriage, parenting, with my boss, coworkers. There's always opportunities. Every day we have a 1,000 opportunities to die to ourselves and put somebody else in front of us. And we can't do that with everything. You know, you can't wake up one day and go, okay, my job is just to go, serve every opportunity. Like, you'll exhaust yourself. But I think what happens is be honest with the question of, gosh, I say that a lot. What's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? We bargain with that chip, and we try to make sure, okay, if I scratch your back, I just want to make sure mine gets it. And so we negotiate that in our heart and our mind more than I think we realize. And then we hold ourselves hostage in those negotiations, because if I don't get out of it what I feel like I need to get out of it, then I'm not going to serve. And so we have to be honest with that about our own selves. So to your question, I think we can be exploratory. We have a question on our staff team that we want to get better at. I heard it from another leader and I ripped it off. And here's the question: do you know what it's like to be on the other side of you?
Mm-hmm. That's good.
So do you even have the self-awareness?
Can a narcissist, though, even start to embrace that?
No, and I think that's on that scale of narcissism, which maybe in a clinical category, I don't think they can. That might actually be something that's beyond their comprehension. But for your average person that wrestles daily with self-entitlement, self-promotion, self-absorption, I think we have to ask, am I even aware that I have I know I have tendencies. I think everybody should acknowledge that. But is it showing? Is it showing up in my relationship? Am I aware of what it's like to be on the other side of me? Are other people experiencing me when they bump into me? Like, gosh, that guy's self-absorbed. That guy's only in it for what he gets out of it.
Yeah. Well, and we all have stories of. I have to be careful with stories because I don't want somebody to listen and go, "Hey, that was me." He was talking about who was a narcissist. But one time I was on the air. This was years ago. When we were first pregnant with Jack, our son, who's now 17. And I remember I was doing a show. I was doing a Blazers show. And Mike Rice, my partner, said something congratulating us for having a baby, for being pregnant. Yeah. And he hadn't even been born yet. And somebody, their wife called. I didn't even know, evidently had been struggling to get pregnant and just ripped me. Oh. How dare you throw that in our face? And I said, what? And I went, and I drove home and I thought, oh my gosh, I've never experienced true narcissism like that. Like I'm taught, and we've all had friends and we all have people, and they're not all bad. I'm just saying that. I think they struggle with it where they do, as you mentioned earlier, they think the world, they think every conversation is about them, everybody and they almost look for situations to satisfy this illogical thirst of knowing that it's about them. And I wish I had the answer for how you go about breaking that. Yeah. But I don't. But you're the pastor, so this is your problem.
Well,
you go.
Well, I heard somebody say something recently, but I think like when you said that, what's so good is I think that a self-centered person is almost always a person that lives offended.
Yeah.
Just offended, and our culture again feeds that. You should be offended. You should be offended.
Oh, this society is the most butthurt society.
Oh, we are absolutely. That's part of the whole plan, but. I think two things that you said. How do we fix that? I heard someone say this the other day, and I was like, whoa. We're talking about how do we die to ourselves, right? When Jesus said, pick up your cross daily, die to yourself, because there's life in him on the other side of that. And this person I was talking to said the best way to die to yourself is to have somebody else dig your grave.
Oh.
Boy, that hung on me. I was like,
that's
wow. Good. And the best example I'll give in that is in our marriage. So, when you set out marriage, you have all these dreams and ambitions, and Bern was 20, I was 21, and we say our vows till death do you apart, and sickness and in health. And you're like, yes, and you're kind of like have this idea, and you're like, everything's going to be perfect, right? And then you fast forward 10 years into our marriage, and my wife is struggling with a lot of health issues, and that gets complicated, and before you know it, I begin to realize how selfish I am. Because now I'm going, she doesn't give me what I feel entitled to and what I signed up for. Man, I started to realize I am so selfish in this relationship because I'm not getting what I feel I deserve out of that. And I started to get bitter inside, and what I realized was that in our marriage, God was showing me how selfish I really was. And not that she woke up one day and it had nothing to do with her, because she didn't wish that upon herself to be sick, but what it took was someone else to dig that grave, that I have to learn to die to myself. I have to learn it's not about me. How do I serve her, not just in this for my own self-serving, and how does she serve me? And so sometimes in life you have circumstances like that. Sometimes it's someone in your life, but I really believe that it takes someone else to dig that grave.
Yeah.
And we realize, wow, I need to die to myself more and not see that person as the enemy, but they might be in my life right now, and how hard it is and all those things. So I can see in a mirror, I got some work to do on myself first.
And then being discerning enough to realize it.
Yep.
And I think that's part of the evolution of it.
Yeah.
Because and that's where I give myself a break, because I'm as selfish as anybody else. My gosh, But then I think, well, at least I realize it when I am. So it's a step in the right direction. Doesn't mean I fix it. I work on it.
Yeah.
But I think some people don't even have that realization to where, do you realize what you just said or what you just did was insanely selfish? And a lot of times they don't get it. We talked in our last episode, as we kind of come down the home stretch again, as when you look at the Bible and people who don't know it oftentimes say, well, those are a whole bunch of words written a long time ago that don't relate in any way to what we're going through now. Sometimes I'll bring up a verse and I'll bring it up to friends who aren't in the Word, who go, wow, that is amazing. I can't believe they were that spot on. So with that, you kind of teased this, but I found this today when I was reading about selfishness, and this is from the Message translation. So it does speak a little bit more. You know this better than I do. It speaks more words that we would use today, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know some people don't like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's some strict King James people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's people that go, well, I need to have it relate.
Yes.
It's easier for people.
Yeah. Language changes over time. And as we translate or paraphrase, it helps us contextualize the language for how we speak today versus 500 or 600 years ago.
And I like oftentimes, even when you have sermons, you'll use the same verse in two different translations because they can mean, or at least come across in slightly different ways. So this is in Timothy. I'm just going to read this because this is a good example of selfishness in our society, but how this was predicted.
Right, exactly.
It's not like we didn't know this was coming. So as the end approaches, people are going to be self-absorbed, money-hungry, self-promoting, stuck-up, profane, contemptuous of parents, crude, coarse, dog-eat-dog, unbending, slanderers, impulsively wild, savage, cynical, treacherous, ruthless, bloated windbags, addicted to lust, and allergic to God. They'll make a show of religion, but behind the scenes, they're animals.
Eugene Peterson.
How about that?
That's a mic drop right there.
Oh, that's just completely.
Wow.
And you read it and you go,
yeah.
I mean, I know it is Eugene Peterson. It's the Message translation, but then you go, I read other translations. It's not that far-fetched.
No, and that was written, 2,000 years ago. And so when you hear that, you go, wow, God, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, forecasted out that this is the way that humanity is going to evolve, and not evolve in a good way.
No.
That it started in the garden, and it continues to evolve, that when we make ourselves God and when we live in a culture that is thirsty and feeds and drinks on the intoxication of self, then you can only imagine that the outcome is those behaviors that you read right there. So how do we figure that out, right? It comes down to, it actually takes a miracle. It takes saying yes to Jesus. He said, if you choose me, that's the beginning. But then he talks about every day there's going to be a battle between the spirit and the flesh and the spirit and flesh. What he's saying is, if you trust me, I'm going to give you my Holy Spirit, and he's going to supernaturally give you the ability that where you keep bumping into yourself, he's going to help you overcome yourself. The Bible talks about the fruit of the Spirit: love, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. Those are all counter self-fruit.
Yeah.
And so he says, listen, if you trust me, I'm going to actually enable you and empower you through my Spirit to overcome you. That you don't have to wake up every day and self-sabotage and be your own enemy, but I'm going to actually bear fruit through you, and it's the fruit of life. So it starts by saying yes to Jesus, but it also means I'm going to trust him every day in his Spirit to help me overcome. And that's what maturity looks like in our faith over time. Nobody wakes up day one being a Jesus follower going, great. It's something we battle with, but over time there's maturity. And I love how John the Baptist said, my goal is to decrease so that he can increase. And so if I have that as a mindset, my life is not about me increasing. I'm going to decrease, and it's all about him increasing. The irony of it is, though, you end up gaining more in the end.
It's well said. I can't do that any better. Man, that's a tough topic. It really is. I mean, it's hard. And we're not sitting here in judgment because everybody's guilty of this.
Every single
one. I I beat myself up over it too much because it's where we naturally, but to try to keep the focus, as you just said, in the right place, it seems to somewhat at least help. And we continue to try to improve because they were battling this, as I just said, all the way back. And then they predicted we'd be in this spot now.
Yep.
We thank you as always for listening and watching Vertical Pursuit. It is a video cast along with a audio podcast. So we know most people probably just listen, but it is video as well on YouTube. You can find the whole series on there. We're also on Spotify and iTunes and on the Vertical Pursuit app. And you can check us out at verticalpursuit.org, the website too. So Mike Tatlock, Mike Barrett, thank you, Colton Myers, the new and improved Colton Myers. Thanks to Nick Livingston, David Ward as well. We'll catch you next time on VP. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast, comment, or message us, and check out our website at verticalpursuit.org. Download the VP app and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.